I mean, I am thankful that we get a full slate of 3 games for Thanksgiving. Music saying so thankful I have Christian McCaffrey. There's a lot to be thankful for today, but let's go ahead. Let's dive into these games and talk about what we can maybe be taking away from them going forward. The first game being, of course, the surprise game of the week. You have the Detroit Lions and Green Bay Packers. The Lions go out and Goff has a considerable amount of passing volume, right? I mean, the Lions trail this entire game. So that does inflate Goff's overall numbers to 44 pass attempts. And if you told me Goff had 44 pass attempts, I would say, oh my gosh, the Lions are trailing. Goff's passing volume through the roof. Give me all the Jahmyr Gibbs I can get. Give me Gibbs over Montgomery even. Gibbs still okay, right? Gibbs does have 8 targets, 4 receptions, 19 receiving yards, and 54 rushing yards. But still, if you are going to be looking at this, I mean, ultimately, Gibbs doesn't give you the 7 reception, 40 receiving yards game that you'd be looking for in an environment like this. St. Brown, fine game, right? 9 receptions, 95 receiving yards gives you that solid floor. Sam Laporta gets you his 8 targets and the receiving touchdown. I mean, overall, the target volume is going to be a little bit inflated for everybody in Detroit, given the game environment that you had. Now, what is interesting is we had previously seen Jameson's involvement in this offense going up and up and up. Here, Jameson doesn't do anything despite the 44 passing attempts for Goff. So really nothing changes here in Detroit. I mean, tough loss for him. You can sit here and argue what it means from a real life perspective. I'm just here to talk fantasy. And from a fantasy perspective, we're still starting Montgomery, Gibbs, St. Brown, and Laporta every single week, regardless of matchups. Now, going over to Green Bay, this is now confirmation yet again that A.J. Dillon is not viable with or without an Aaron Jones injury. I think we ranked A.J. Dillon as like mid RB3 this week. Is probably still even a little too high. I mean, we saw it at the beginning of the season. You see it again this week. A.J. Dillon really does nothing in this game. And you would think that if A.J. Dillon's ever really going to do anything here, it would be today in a game where they blow out the Detroit Lions, right? You would think it would be in that game environment, but ultimately it's not. So still, I'd go through and I'd bench A.J. Dillon. Christian Watson gets there and saves a few of our best ball teams. Actually does something this week. Gives you 94 receiving yards, the receiving touchdown, and 7 targets. Now, you can sit here and take this a couple different ways. You can say, well, ultimately, if you look at Christian Watson this season, Watson has been injured the entire year. We've had game and game again where he's gone out there, gotten hurt, and then really it's hard to look at the per game numbers for Christian Watson. So you could sit here, make excuses for him and say that he's going to be good to go going forward. In reality, probably very difficult to say that, right? In reality, the situation is we probably don't want to be starting anybody here in Green Bay, and they are going to be extremely volatile going forward. Now, going over to Dallas, Brandon Cooks gets there yet again with the long receiving touchdown. I think that pretty much marks the play that you have where this game gets out of hand. Ultimately, while I know Brandon Cooks is exciting and hopefully you add him in your underdog best ball teams, still probably not someone that we're super pumped to go through and start going forward. He has 5 targets in this game. Obviously not a ton of passing volume, 32 total pass attempts for Dak Prescott. But still, Brandon Cooks is there 4 or 5 targets every single week. You really are just sending up a prayer that maybe he ends up scoring a touchdown, which in this game he does, which is very exciting if you started him. CeeDee Lamb, going to continue to do CeeDee Lamb things. Looks great. Rank him as a top 5 wide receiver going forward. He has 9 targets. And then going over to the running backs, Tony Pollard gets there with the rushing touchdown. Pollard gets there with the target volume as well. He has 6 receptions in this game. Pollard remains someone that you are going to go through and you're going to be starting every single week. Now, it is a little bit frustrating, of course, that Dowdle does get a touchdown here. So maybe Pollard could have had a little bit of a bigger game. But ultimately, I'm not taking too much away from this. You still start Tony Pollard every week. You start CeeDee Lamb every week. You start Dak Prescott every week. And a side note, maybe you're not super pumped about Jake Ferguson going forward. Ferguson has 3 targets. Shoemaker has 2. Really, Ferguson's not talented enough to be in a tight end by committee here. Now, on the Washington side of things, you have a ton of passing, but time and time again, I want to stand by. I'm sorry, but Sam Howell's not good, right? But from a fantasy perspective, maybe these options as pass catchers can kind of get there if you're going to have 44 passing attempts pretty much every single week at this point. I mean, if you look at the underlying running back usage, we don't have the snap data just yet, but you do have Brian Robinson seeing some touches taken away, specifically as a receiver as well, to Antonio Gibson. Gibson does have 4 targets out of the backfield. Very tough matchup for Brian Robinson. I don't want to be taking away too much away from this. And then while Curtis Samuel, a great game with 12 targets, he could have actually had a bigger game as well. Terry McLaurin is okay with 11 targets. The reality of the situation is they're spreading the ball out so much that I'm probably not excited about Samuel going forward, and we're still going to rank Terry McLaurin as that like mid to low and wide receiver too. I don't think that changes too much. But you do have Brian Robinson a little bit on the decline with the Gibson usage. Now, going over to Seattle, I was very excited to see Zach Charbonnet, and Charbonnet did get there for our underdog pick'em today. Y'all know my favorite pick'ems today. Geno Smith to throw an interception, Brock Purdy to have no interceptions, and Zach Charbonnet for more than 3.5 receptions. All 3 hit, ladies and gentlemen, so you know I got to flex on you. But ultimately, horrible matchup going up against one of the best defenses in the NFL. Geno Smith not fully healthy. Nothing looked right in this offense. If you look at the underlying usage, Zach Charbonnet did have inspiring usage. He didn't really do anything with it, 3.4 yards per carry, but he did have 14 carries and 4 receptions. Very difficult to take anything away when you're playing against the Niners defense with a banged up quarterback, right? And then, yeah, JSN makes highlight grab, but ultimately doesn't translate to anything for fantasy. Metcalf dominates in targets. Overall, the entire offense is horrendous, and you probably need to be avoiding everybody playing the 49ers defense. And then going over to San Fran, I mean, we were saying to sell high on Brandon Ayuk, sell high with George Kittle with Deebo Samuel coming back in. And it looks like I was a clown to say that because Brandon Ayuk is going to continue to be the most efficient wide receiver in the entire NFL. Ayuk, 25 yards per reception yet again today. He gets you the receiving touchdown, continues to go out there and be viable, even in a game where Deebo Samuel gets the rushing touchdown. Deebo Samuel almost has 100 total yards. And then Christian McCaffrey here as well just looks so damn good. I mean, one thing that I'm pissed about myself for, and of course I'm an idiot, I'd say this all the time, but something that is brutal to look at is the fact that Christian McCaffrey was someone that I ranked behind Justin Jefferson, was someone that I ranked behind Jamar Chase. I don't know how I don't just go through and put CMC at the 101 every single season. Obviously, what's going to happen next year is I'm going to go, okay, this guy was drafted in 2017. Look how old he is. He has the red flags. Let's take Justin Jefferson. Let's take Jamar Chase. I already know I'm not going to put CMC at the 101 next year. I already know that McCaffrey's going to go out there and McCaffrey's going to dominate. I'm not underweight McCaffrey by any means, but it just pisses me off that if you would have ranked him at the 101 this year and in all those underdog drafts, you would have just taken him ahead of the receivers. You could have walked away with Christian McCaffrey in like 25 to 30% of your leagues easily. The volume's compelling. It's one of the best offenses in the NFL. He is the most talented running back in the NFL. It's not even really close. It's a phenomenal offensive line. And I'm pissed at myself for not taking him over Jefferson. I'm pissed at myself for not taking him over Chase. Going forward, nothing changes. He's the most valuable player in fantasy. Deebo Samuel, someone that we're going to start every week. You're going to start Brandon Ayuk every single week. You're going to start George Kittle every single week. And you are going to accept some natural volatility in that not all these guys can be hyper productive, right? But I did have to rant just a bit there on what we have with a Mr. Christian McCaffrey in that. I'm not underweight, but there's no excuse not to have him in 25, 30% of leagues. But thank you again, ladies and gentlemen, for spending your Thanksgiving with me. I really appreciate you. And if you have not done so already, please go down there, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And if you wanted to check out any of these pick'ems over on Underdog Fantasy, if you want to say, oh, Tim Boyle's going to have more than 8.5 fantasy points this week, you can find that link in the live chat description comment section. Promo code FLOG, 100% deposit match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers, and a special pick'em as well. But let's move this over. Cole says 10-team BBR 7-4. We have Herbert, Bijan, JT, Chase, Keenan, Lamb, Kelsey. And then on the bench, Pittman, Smith, Deontay, McBride, Charbonnet. Good offered Swift and Godwin for Bijan and Smith. What are your thoughts? Don't know if we like it. I'm going to go Bijan and Devonta Smith. I mean, ultimately, if you are looking at this, I think Bijan gets a little more usage out of the bye, and at the same time, this is a running back that has the best fantasy football playoff schedule that you are going to find. Country Connected says 8-3, Kyler, Brees, Bijan, Mostert, Ramondre, Brian Robinson, Amon-Ra, Keenan, Jefferson, Deontay Pickens. Just traded Brian Robinson for Evans. What are your thoughts on any other trades? I mean, here, if we're looking at this team, I think it's completely reasonable when we have this kind of running back depth. Ultimately, you have so much depth overall that if you could go through and take like Mike Evans and Deontay and go trade them for an upgrade at wide receiver, or Mike Evans and Mostert, or Deontay and Ramondre, and just make a 2-for-1 deal to get an upgrade in the starting lineup, you can definitely afford it on it, but love that. Now, Aiden says, trade or hold Chase. So essentially, if you are looking to hold Chase, what I have seen the best deal be is packaging together Chase with a wide receiver 2, such as Terry McLaurin, and then seeing if we can pivot to a top 5 wide receiver. See if we can stay in the range of Stephon Diggs. See if you can stay in the range of A.J. Brown. See if you can stay in the range of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Obviously, you won't be able to do that straight up, but if you could possibly package 2 guys together to do it, I would really like that. Connor says Swift and DJ Moore for Austin Eckler. If it is a shallow format, probably give me Eckler, even if Eckler is heading the wrong way. Thomas says, happy Thanksgiving. Someone dropped Garrett Wilson in my league. Should we drop Pierce? Yes. He's not going to be much worse than Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson was the worst quarterback in the NFL before getting benched. I don't think Tim Boyle is going to come out and be great, but I would for sure rather have Garrett Wilson over Dameon Pierce, my friend. And Alex says 5-6. 10-team league. Flex Waddle or Ridley. Very tough matchup for Waddle. I'll still probably go Waddle until we see Ridley for one more week. Waddle's more consistent, but I'm worried the Jets lock down 2 and the Dolphins will coast to a win. What are your thoughts? 100%. I understand that we are worried about the matchup here, and if you really wanted to go through and play Ridley, you can. I personally still go Waddle. It's close, though. Hogan says Singletary or Judy. We're going to go Singletary. And should we pick someone off the waiver wire? Shakir, Elijah, Zay Jones, Rondale, Auden, Chark, or Spears? We started Debo. He had Purdy. Thanks. Happy Thanksgiving. Congrats on the strong start, my friend. And no, I wouldn't pick up any of those guys off waivers. If you really wanted to go with maybe like Elijah Moore over Judy, maybe you can. Not super exciting. Colin says, should we trade Gibbs for Dell? I would easily rather have Gibbs over Dell, to be honest with you. Michael says, bench Debo to play Warren. Is there still hope? Hate the call, but I mean, maybe the change in offensive coordinator unlocks Jalen Warren. We'll see. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day. And one last question. Justin saying, happy Thanksgiving. Start Waddle or Garrett Wilson. Let's go ahead and let's look at the underdog projections. You have Jalen Waddle currently for 59.5 total yards, 10.25 fantasy points. You go over to Garrett Wilson. They have Garrett Wilson for 53.5 total yards. They're saying Waddle, despite the tough matchup, based off the implied team totals, I probably do go Waddle as well. And I think that's it. If you wanted to check out any of those pick'ems, code FLOCK, 100% deposit match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers, and a special pick'em. Tonight, it was CMC more than less than half a total yard. I don't know exactly what it'll be tomorrow. Probably more than less than half a total yard for Tua. But nonetheless, if you're new to Underdog with promo code FLOCK, you will be getting that. But thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day, and really hope we get to see you out in the live stream tomorrow night.